Hello, and you're very welcome to the Agriland studio in Dublin today, where we're joined by a panel of experts to look at what the benefits are for farmers when it comes to organics. How can farmers make organics work for them, and what are the key markets? More than 1,000 farmers are set to join the organic farming scheme this year. This week, Agriland, in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, has been taking a closer look at what the challenges are and the opportunities when it comes to organic farming. And today, joining us in studio are Jack Nolan, Head of Organics at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Mary Lynch, Organic Specialist with the Agricultural Consultants Association, and Emmett Doyle, who is Board BIA's Organic Sector Manager. And you're all very welcome here to Agriland. So Jack, if we start with you first, there are some clear benefits for farmers in moving to organic farming. What are they?
I suppose from the department point of view, you're going to reduce your cost hugely. Like your fertiliser bill is gone virtually, you'll be using slurry and dung. You'll receive payment from the department funded, from the National Exchequer in the EU. The average payment is about €12,000. And when you look at the beef and sheep sector and see tillage the way it is at the minute, an awful lot of farmers' incomes is actually coming from subsidies. So, for example, from the National Farm Survey, about 120 or 30% of a farmer's income comes from subsidies. So you're reducing your costs, you're increasing your income, and the supports available have hugely increased. Like if you had, say, this 2 years ago, none of the three of us would be here because there was no organic division in the department. There were no ACA specialists, like they're being funded by the department, and there was no one in Board B dealing with it full time. And this is just symptomatic of what's happening right across the whole sector. There's way more support. So the financial supports are one thing, but what's happening now is research around organics, increased farm walks, advisory support, which is key, a market push by Board BIA. And like Board BIA, Emmett will talk about it later on, but there's huge demand out there for Irish organic beef and lamb. Yeah. There's a massive opportunity. And when you see the protests in Brussels this week, farmers aren't being paid properly for their food, for what they're producing. There's a crisis out there, and people say, look, the cost of living crisis, are people switching from organic? We throw out about 30% of the food that's produced between the farm and flush, say, or the farm and fork. And if people think about what they're eating, and people are becoming more aware that an awful lot of food today is high in fat, salt and sugar, and look at organic. The sky, like the Minister for Agriculture said it, Minister McConlogue at a meeting last year, the sky is the limit for organics in Ireland.
And Mary, do you see that there is a sea change there on the ground?
Yes, there's. It's now acceptable to become an organic farmer. Nearly everyone in the parish, they know someone in the parish who's already organic, and that kind of saturation makes a big difference. Because if you know someone who's organic, you can see, well, listen, they're doing okay, their cattle look well, the grass is growing, their crops look okay. That makes people more confident then to make the step as well. Because often a lot of what is influences farmers is another farmer. And if they see a farmer being successful at being an organic farmer, well, they say, Joe, well, if Joe can do it, so can I. And that kind of attitude is there. And they see then that all the, the advisory services are there for them. The farm walks, that all that help is there. Yeah. And everything's positive around organic at the moment, which it wouldn't have been 10 years ago. It's kind of, we were seen as kind of the outliers. But now it's an acceptable choice for most farmers to choose to go organic. And, as more and more farmers go organic, it's easier to get organic seed, it's easier to get organic feed, it's easier to source stock, all that becomes easier. So therefore it's an easier choice then for farmers.
Yeah.
And most farmers understand, their input costs are going up, and in general the price they're getting for their produce. So one of the ways they can control that is go organic. They can cut their input costs, they'll have a market for their organic beef, they'll hopefully get a bit extra for it. And that, along with the organic payments from the organic farming scheme, priority access into acres, all that is giving them a viable income, and that's really what all of us as farmers want.
Yeah, and Emmett, price is the factor there, isn't it really? And the market, so there has to be a market. And you're relatively new into this position. I know you're 2 years now in it, but what have you seen over the last 2 years?
There's a lot of opportunities for organics, both in the domestic market and in export markets. So last year, focused on the domestic market. We launched, we did a large research project on the consumer to get an understanding of who the organic shopper is and what the drivers and motivation is around organics and what's the kind of base level of consumption at the moment. And it was actually really, really positive. Some of the kind of key takeaways from that research was about 80% of all shoppers have bought into organics in some format, with 1 in 2 shoppers buying organic veg and eggs on a weekly basis, and a third of shoppers buying organic beef on a weekly basis. So there's an organic shopper out there already. The focus from a board beer perspective in the Irish market is getting those shoppers to buy more Irish organic beef, lamb, dairy more regularly. And that's where we kind of launched our marketing campaign in October, which was focused on that shopper, showing that you can switch into Irish organic food quite easily, be it out in the shop, part of your meal planning and consuming at home. And we got some of the results from the campaign. And what we saw is that 70% of those shoppers who saw the campaign actually went out and looked for Irish organic beef, lamb, dairy in their shop, and 40% of them actually bought more organic Irish food and drink. So there's a real positive story there in the Irish market. And then if you're looking at kind of exports, that's where all this growth that's coming into the sector will a large part of it will go to. So from an organic beef and lamb side of things, anything between 75 to 80% of what we produce in the next 3 to 5 years will be exported. And we've done a lot of work with industry over the last 12 months to identify what those markets are, and it's really kind of continental Europe and UK. So at the moment, we're doing a large research project to identify where exactly those opportunities are for organic beef and lamb. You know, what channel is it? Who are the customers? So then we can start kind of linking in those manufacturers with those customers.
Yeah, and at Agriland, one of the key issues for us is always about what's the bottom line for farmers. So what can organics deliver for farmers?
Like if you look at the weather, I was looking at the weather the other day. Last year there was 7 millimetres of rain. This year there's 120 millimetres of rain so far in February. You're more climate resilient for a start because you don't have the high input costs that a conventional farmer has. You have much more support there. There's 3 things you have to consider. How much is it costing me to farm at the minute? So how much am I spending on fertiliser, meal, expensive inputs? When you become organic, you need to be a good grassland farmer, you know, to manage the clover, manage multi-species, replace meal as much as possible with red clover silage. You'll get support for the government. You know, you'll get on average 12,000, depending on your farm size, but around 12,000 a year, which is 60,000 over the 5 years of the scheme. And you will get a premium for what you're producing. At the minute, that's around 10 or 12% on beef and lamb. There's huge opportunities there in horticulture. Emma touched on it there. We import about 70% of organic horticulture into the country products. So, you know, that's the same in conventional as well. So the bottom line, and Teagasc are doing research on this at the minute. Before Christmas, Teagasc kicked off a research project, or got funding for it. It's going to be 1.3 million. It'll set out a blueprint for beef and sheep farmers, and it'll also show the costs and returns of it. And then it'll become really clear for farmers that I'm better off being an organic farmer. I won't be as stressed out with the bills that are coming in. An awful lot of farmers still owe money from last harvest, for example, in the tillage sector, and I'll have a better quality of life. I'll be better off with a better quality of life. That's what it's offering for farmers.
Yeah. And do you see that farmers are looking at those opportunities, Mary?
Yeah, we see it much more now because I suppose there's much more in the media about clover. So, and farmers probably start to dip their toe in it and they say, you know, and they say, you know, maybe I can still produce as much grass, excuse me. And then with the change, you know, with the price of fertilizer going so high, a lot of farmers cut back. And actually they realised, you know, I still grew a lot of grass, I still have to feed my animals. So maybe going organic and doing without fertilizer, using your slurry in your farm manure more efficiently, understanding your soil fertility a bit more. But even, you know, with a lot of the introduction courses we do for organic farmers, you know, a bit understanding more about the animal nutrition, about veterinary issues and all that, and how much more about prevention rather than the focus, I suppose, has always been about treating animals, what you do. Sure. But the focus in organic is very much about prevention. And if you're preventing, then you don't have the costs as well. And you have higher animal welfare. So it's all feeding into what the consumer wants as well. You know, they don't want animals that have been treated. They don't want a lot of pesticides going into their products. So what we do as an organic farmer, it feeds into the way consumers are going, and with the environmental requirements now that are going to be there for farming in the future, organic fits into that as well. So it's achieving an awful lot by making a step to organic. It's easier to be in acres, it's easier to be in whatever is coming down the line as well, and that'll make it better for farmers in the long run.
And Emma, is that feedback you're getting from the market, both home and further afield? You know that we have all of the issues around climate, we have issues around animal welfare. That's what's driving consumer purchases. Are you seeing that when it comes to organics?
No, yeah, exactly. So part of that research, the key drivers for shoppers in Ireland around organics was around the kind of naturalness of the product, kind of perception around the animal welfare, the environmental impact, and they're actually why they're buying into the category, along with the quality taste of our organic produce. And then in kind of export markets as well, particularly in continental Europe, it's a lot more of a mature market. So they've known all these things for years. But the benefit from our perspective is that there's a high reputation and awareness of Ireland as producers of kind of grass-based agriculture. And from our conversations with the retailers, particularly in the likes of Germany, France, the UK, they see a great opportunity when more output comes through from an organic beef and lamb side of things, that they can start including Irish organic beef and lamb as part of their own portfolio. They're already sourcing conventional beef and lamb. They see the quality of it, and they see it as a quite there's still work to be done, but they can turn it into organic quite easily in the coming years.
Yeah. And Mary, are there any specific challenges that farmers identify for you?
I suppose one of the big challenges is the housing. Our rules in relation to organic housing are very specific. So they must have a bedded lying area for the animals, whether that's a bedded cubicle or a bedded solid area. So I suppose for the farmers who have gone down the fully slatted unit, it takes a bit more work for them to convert, but there is, under the organic TAMs, there is 60% grant aid to help them do that. So, and we have lots of examples of what farmers have done in their sheds to make them compliant. It actually didn't cost them a huge amount of money. So I suppose that would be one of the challenges. Farmers are always afraid of inspections, they're afraid of that.
Yeah.
And generally, once they come through their first year, once they come through their initial inspection, they've had maybe one spot inspection or an annual inspection. They're so used to doing paperwork now between all the different schemes that the organic paperwork is no more, in a lot of cases, they'd be keeping for Borbia, or they'd be keeping if they're in an acre scheme or Reps or Gloucester or any of those schemes. So actually, when they get into it, they find actually they didn't need to be as much afraid of it as they were. But listen, it is reality. We're all, no one likes someone coming in checking up on you, but it is a basic part of being an organic farmer, is that checking, because that's what the consumer wants. The consumer, first of all, will always ask, how do we know you're organic? And the reason how they know you're organic is that there is a certification process in place. Every farmer has at least an annual inspection, maybe a spot inspection as well, so that they're actually checked to make sure they're compliant with the organic rules. And as I said, farmers can be afraid of that at start, but if you talk to them after 3 or 4 years, they're fine. They accept it just as part of the process, and it's if you want to avail of the organic market, if you want to avail of the organic farming scheme payments, this is what you have to do. And once the returns are good, farmers are very flexible and they don't mind keeping an extra bit of paperwork.
Yeah. And Jack, what do you think the secret is to getting more farmers in then?
Knowledge and information sharing, like Mary said. So go to a farm walk if you're a farmer and talk to someone that's actually doing it, because you mentioned earlier on there that the target is 10% by 2030. But actually, it'd be great if Ireland became the leader in Europe and we were seen as an organic island. Like, organic is built on a low-cost system, and we've the biggest advantage in Europe for a grass-based production system. So we should be really aiming to lead the way. But if you were a farmer watching it, this year, look back at your last year accounts and say, right, that's what I spent on fertiliser, that's what I spent on spray. I'm going to eliminate those. I'm going to get a payment from the government. What can I do? Yeah. And I'm well able for it. Like, we have very good farmers in Ireland. If you go to any of the Teagasc or ACA events and see the level of grassland management that's there, and 2/3 of the farmers in Ireland have 1/3 of the stock. So there's 1/3 of the farmers that are, say, intensively stocked, they're derogation farmers and so on. The majority of other farmers that are out there could produce plenty of grass through clover, red clover, multi-species grass. And sure, I suppose what they should ask themselves is, why amn't I? Why amn't I getting paid? Why am I dependent on a co-op advisor coming in, telling me what to do? Go to a course, talk to a farmer, educate yourself, and come over, because we genuinely should be a world leader in organics. We should be aiming to become an organic island. It'd be a huge marketing benefit to us if we were saying, if Emmett was going out to market saying, look, we're top of the class in Europe, we're the best there is, look at the tourism benefits of it, and farmers will make more money doing it.
Yeah, and we do sell on our green image, don't we, Emmett?
Absolutely. I think the grass-based production system, as kind of Jack and Mary have mentioned, is really important, particularly in some of these markets. And we've actually been awarded through the EU, we did an application for an EU co-funded campaign for organic beef and lamb, which we're going to be kicking off in June in 4 markets, being Germany, Sweden, Austria and Belgium. And that's all around pasture-raised organic beef and lamb, because this is actually a clear differentiator for us in this kind of marketplace. So it's going to be €2.7 million over the next 3 years. And that's going to help us do more trade shows, do more organic meat academies. So going into market and educating trade buyers, media, chefs, butchers about the quality of our organic farming systems, but also we'll be bringing in between 80 and 100 organic buyers and media into Ireland over the 3 years, so they can walk on farm and see it from themselves. So really, it's brilliant that we'll have the opportunity to kind of really drive home the quality of our grass-based organic system.
Yeah. And do you find, Mary, that there are farmers in certain sectors that are more receptive to becoming organic?
Yeah, I suppose the beef sector and the lamb sector would be probably the two most, because a lot of those would be lowly stocked anyway. We've had a lot of sheep farmers along the western coast come in the last 12 months since the new organic farming scheme is there. And a lot of the tillage farmers really are questioning what they're doing, and they're seeing this, the organic farmers can still get 2 tons to the acre with, in a lot of cases sowing, closing the gate and harvesting, and they're really surprised at what we're able to achieve with so little inputs. But it's putting the work in beforehand to make sure your soil fertility is right and having clover in your swards before you do that. So a lot of those are starting to question, because they're not making money at what they're doing. And that's always the first driver for farmers. We all have to make a living at what we're doing. So they're looking at that and they're saying, well, maybe organic is a way. And, they might try a smaller area first and then eventually we see them converting. And actually, for a lot of farmers, one of the things we hear is, I'm sorry I didn't do it 5 years ago.
Okay.
It wasn't as big a step as I thought it was. It wasn't as daunting. In general, organic farmers are very keen to share knowledge. They're very open at farm walks. Even whoever you walk in next to, they'll share the knowledge with you. And that has been a big thing for a lot of the farmers. It's very open, it's friendly, and farmers are willing to help other farmers to become organic as well once they're in the system.
Yeah.
And there's plenty, between Teagasc and the ACA having advisors on the ground that'll help you to change over. The knowledge is there, the help is there. So farmers shouldn't be afraid of going organic. And, if they look in their neighbourhood, there probably is 1 or 2 organic farmers already as the numbers have gone up.
Yeah. And does it work for everyone, Jack? Because we do have calls into Agriland here from dairy farmers who say that they're not getting the prices that they hoped they would when they went organic.
No, it doesn't. It isn't. This isn't a solution to everybody's issue, but there are a large cohort of farmers out there that it would suit. So 70 or 80% of the farmers in the country could come organic. Dairy at the minute, we have about 100 organic dairy farmers out of 5,000. So 1%, 2%, and it's difficult to see that change with the market reward. Dairy farmers are making so much money conventionally anyway, but they're under savage pressure. So at the moment, a lot of them are calving cows, they're up, God knows what kind of hours they're working. They're finding it very hard to get a successor. They're having difficulties with nitrates and the derogation, what's going to happen with the 220. They know that they have to invest in slurry storage, increase it by 10 or 20%, maybe, over the next year or so. So there's an awful lot of pressure on them there. So they, I suppose, have to look at their own system and see, does what I'm doing justify the amount of effort I'm coming in? It's a very positive sector from a financial point of view, but why aren't there more young people coming into it? So organics has been shown. Professor Maura Farrell did a research project saying organics across Europe attracts more young people. It's more innovative. You will get a successor. I was in UCD recently talking to Fortags, and if there were 100 in the room, I'd say 80-90% were positive.
Yeah.
Now, we're only at 5 out of 100 being organic, so there's great scope to growth, but I would never say it's for everybody, but it's for an awful lot of people. And they're the people we want to talk to. Come and talk to us.
Sure. Amiri, do you find that people maybe do a section of the farm? Do they kind of start off small and go organics, or is it a whole jump into the entire farm?
In most cases with cattle and the sheep farmers, they probably bring the whole lot in one go, and the dairy farmers as well. Probably the tillage ones would be the one mainly that would do a split conversion, where they might convert some of the land and then see how they get on with that and convert the other one. There are specific rules about that. They can't grow the same crop, organic and non-organic, because obviously just from a certification point of view, guaranteeing what is organic is organic. But they would often, and a lot of those, so if they might bring in 80 acres or 100 acres if they have 200 or 300 acres, and see how they get on, and then bring the rest of it in as it goes on. I suppose the ones would have difficulty, like what Jack was saying, would be tillage farmers who are very dependent on conacre, because you have to either own the land or you have to have a 5-year lease on it for the land to become organic. So if you are dependent on a conacre system, then your tillage system would have to change an awful lot, or you'd have to come back to the land that you were able to get on a long-term lease. Yeah.
And Emmett, how important is taking the message out to markets? I know that Board Bia has been taking part in a lot of export markets. There's been a lot of exhibitions that you've been taking part in. Is that really crucial?
Oh, absolutely. I think as I mentioned earlier on, like more of our production will be exported in years to come. So now's the time to actually start building that awareness that Ireland's on a journey, that over the next kind of 2 to 3 years, we'll see more product on the stream, particularly from 2025 onwards, with that initial 2,000 farmers joining last year. And it's been well received by trade. You know, these things take a long time to get product over the line, get a new listing. And that's why we've been starting the conversation in the last year. So, you know, despite the space of the last 18 months, we've been to Biofac, which is the leading trade show in Germany, but the number one global organic trade show in the world. But also Nat Expo, which is a dedicated trade show in Paris for the French market and Belgian market, worth a combined about 15 billion as well. So it's really starting that journey of kind of educating key trade customers that Ireland and will have more organic kind of beef and lamb coming on stream in the coming years.
And ultimately, that's really important for farmers, isn't it? Because that boosts your bottom line.
Absolutely. And sometimes a little bit of confusion from farmers wondering, is there too many farmers joining organics? Is this going to have a negative impact? But it's actually the opposite. The more farmers join in, the more tonnage that we can go out, means that we can actually attract larger customers, particularly in the continent, who up to now we haven't had the scale to actually service them 52 weeks of the year. But come from 2025 onwards, you know, and from the conversation we're having, we'll have those opportunities. So I'd encourage more farmers to join.
Yeah. And Mary, just from the opportunities in 2024, where do you see those?
Well, it'll be, I suppose, we'll have hopefully a lot more of the suckler farmers will be looking at organic, and some of the finishers as well, that their system might suit, because maybe they're using less than they're stocked at less than 100 kgs of organic nitrogen per hectare, but they've already dipped their toe maybe into doing a little bit of reseeding with clover, and that maybe their housing isn't that far from being compliant. And a lot of those, it will be an easy conversion for them. And a lot of those, you know, their bottom line is very tight at the moment. And an extra 10, 15, 20,000 to them will make a huge difference. Plus the opportunity to be able to sell their cattle for maybe 10, 20% premium at the end of the day. So they're looking at it. We still have some of the hill sheep farmers looking at it as well. An awful lot of them have gone organic, but they're looking at it as well, because it's, again, they don't have a huge amount of changes to make for them to go organic. And the market, you know, for organic lamb has increased in the last few years as well. The dairy sector is a little bit more difficult. Some of them are so intensively stocked, they have large borrowings. You know, they would have to really look at it much more clearly if they were to think of go organic, because obviously they have a lot more hurdles to get over if they were to drop their stocking rate back to becoming organic without the use of artificial nitrogen. So, but like the help is there, the advice is there, we have the technical expertise to help them if they are interested. And I suppose that's the first thing, you have to have some bit of interest in going organic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have been niggling at them for a while, and they've been thinking about it. Maybe 2024 is the year now. Come to the farm walks, have a serious look at it, talk to your advisor, whoever you've been getting your advice from. You'll be talking to them in the next few weeks, they'll be doing your BIS application. Maybe bring up the conversation about, I'm thinking about going organic, what would you think?
Yeah.
And that can start a whole trail. And then it's amazing when the farmers come to the farm walks, it's that exchange of information. See, like as we always say, seeing is believing. When you see a farm that's producing a good amount of grass, is stocked fairly well. You know, we have farms stocked 1.3, 1.4 livestock units to the hectare because they're doing their clover right.
Yeah.
And that often is, people then believe they can do it.
Is it a fear factor? Is there a little element of that, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Just on the opportunities, if I may, we did a colleague arranged an organic feed survey over Christmas, and we need 50,000 tonnes of feed this coming winter for organics. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge opportunity in the tillage sector to grow combi crops. So that's legume like pea with barley and with wheat and so on. There is a fear factor of the unknown, and Mary is dead right. Come to a farm walk and talk to someone. Or this year, we haven't mentioned so far the organic certification bodies, the IOA and the Organic Trust. And if you pick up the phone to them and ask them a few questions or ask Mary questions, but the ideal thing is to talk to a farmer and do the bottom line on it yourself. They are wondering, look, am I going back? But this is where agriculture started from. Yeah. You know, and you've been told, my father, God rest him, told me when he first used sprays in the 70s, he was told 1 year now we'll get rid of all the weeds. And we're using more spray than ever before. Why are we so dependent on expensive chemical fertilizer? Why are we bringing in expensive meal into the country? Like all these things in organics, they're gone. Yeah. So you don't have those costs. So I'd ask everyone to find out information for themselves so that you're making an informed decision. And there's 5,000 farmers out there now after making the decision. So talk to one of them and find out for yourself.
Yeah, and against the backdrop of what's been happening in, we have the Ukrainian war, we have pressures and factors really right across the globe. The organic issue is more to the fore now, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and like we've seen sales of organics grow year on year. Like even throughout the cost of living crisis, there might have been a bit of stagnation in some markets, but like a market like Germany or France have grown from about €1 billion in kind of 2004 up to 15 billion in Germany's case. And from talking to those retailers, they see organic as key as part of their own portfolio going forward as well. So it's a really positive story. It's not going anywhere, particularly in Europe with that mature market. There's an organic shopper that's all they buy.
Yeah.
And we'll have opportunity now with more volumes coming through to attract that shopper.
Yeah, because food security is a major issue now for Ireland.
Yeah, it is. It's just interesting there. There's a Green Claims Directive being discussed in Parliament and Commission at the moment. Because say in France, like you get about 40 different labels saying nature friendly, free from this, free from that. None of that will be allowed in the future unless it's certified.
Yeah.
Organic is accepted, that you can back up what's been said. You know, if it's organic, it's been inspected, it's delivering. Whereas with all these other things there, and they're going to be under pressure in the future, like people accept that organics is there. Food security is definitely important. We export enough food to feed 40 million people. Mm-hmm. We have a huge level of obesity across Europe. About 50% of adults are obese. So it's not that we're not producing enough food. It's not being distributed fairly. And the quality of food, if you should even call it food, that people are eating. So if you're eating organic, the best thing you could do is find a slug maybe in an apple or something, because like if the slug...
They've been there before.
I'm not saying organics hasn't, but you know what I mean? Like, so this ultra-processed food, it's terrible. Like I train children, and talking to the other managers over Teams, they're buying larger jerseys because their children are getting bigger. Yeah. And it's not because they're eating good, healthy food. So we really need to think when we talk about food security, what we eat affects our brain, obviously. It affects our health system.
Sure.
So it's the distribution and the quality of what we're eating. And organics will deliver. Organics can deliver on so many fronts. It really will. It's a huge opportunity for Irish farmers and for Ireland.
Yeah. And just the last word to you, Mary, today. If we have a farmer watching us today and they're thinking, okay, I might think about organics, what's the first thing they should do?
Talk to their advisor, whether they're with Teagasc or with an ACA person, and then they'll see all the farm walks will be advertised on all the social media and all the paper outlets, and come along to a farm walk during the summer. There can be the most friendliest events. We always have a cup of tea at the end, have the chat to other organic farmers and talk to them about how they got on. Or if you know someone in your area that's organic, most of them are more than willing to talk about what changes they had to make. But we have a whole advisory service in place. I'm there to back up the ACA advisors if they don't have an awful lot of knowledge about organic. We have 2 organic specialists in the ACA. Teagasc have 6 organic specialists. So there is plenty of help and advice out there. And it's only a matter of either making contact directly with us or through an ACA member or through a Teagasc member in your local office, and they will put you in contact with an organic specialist.
Okay. I'd like to thank our experts for joining us today. Jack Nolan, Head of Organics at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Mary Lynch, Organic Specialist with the Agricultural Consultants Association, and Emmett Doyle, who's Board-Based Organic Sector Manager. And you can find out lots more about organics at www.agriland.ie. Thank you.